Hi, Cam.
Hey, Tim.
Hi. Oh, hi, everybody. When I first log on, I only see one little box.
Welcome to the party.
Yeah, thanks.
Looks like we're still waiting for a couple of members, so we'll give it a minute.
Tom and I were just finishing up another meeting.
Okay, great. Let's see if we have everybody then. Tom. Okay, doesn't look like we have Matt yet, but do you want me to get started, Sarah, in the interest of time?
Yes, I think you can go ahead.
Okay. Yes, we do have a tight schedule today, so we'll try to keep on track and run through quickly as possible because I know Chris and Kim have another meeting they need to go to in an hour. So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the September 15th JTAB meeting. I'm Kim Feldstedt, I'm Park City's Transit Manager. And Cindy, would you please go ahead and call the roll at this time?
Good morning. From Summit County Council, so far we have Councilman Tim Carson, Councilman Chris Robinson. Park City Council, we have Councilman Tim Henney and Councilman Steve Joyce. Summit County staff, we have Tom Fisher, Carolyn Rodriguez, and Jamie Danzy. Park City staff, we have Matt Diaz, Sarah Pierce, Kim Belstead, Vinnie Nguyen, Scott Birmingham, Robbie Smoot, Andy Stevenson, Alexis Verson, and myself, Cindy Stockley.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Kim, would you address the questions in chat? We've got some members of the public who are curious about how to engage.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Andy, if you maybe could answer those questions.
Yeah, the first question, is there an audio only version of this meeting? Currently, just on this Zoom platform, you will see the video and audio together. I don't know if that was in regards to after, like, if this recorded meeting will have an audio version, we can certainly upload that where we upload the YouTube.
No, I think the question is there's a lot of times where Zoom also has a call-in number that you can just literally call in from a phone and participate with audio only. I'll offer that what I've done with meetings like this where there isn't a call-in number is if you have a phone and you have the Zoom client, you can call in, and then if you just reduce the app, it turns off the video, but you can still hear the audio and participate that way. But that's all I see.
Actually, if I may, it's Kim. There's numbers listed on our invite. So if you wanted to call 669-900-6833, and then the webinar ID is 818-9436-6244, and I'll put that into chat. So you could give that a try.
Okay. Are there any other questions, Andy?
Nope, those were the only two that I saw.
Okay, great, thank you. Right, then we'll go ahead and adopt our electronic meetings determination. You could pull that item up on the screen, Andy, while I read it. Okay. This meeting will be an electronic meeting without an anchor location as permitted by Utah Code Open and Public Meetings Act, Section 52-4-2074, as amended June 18th, 2020, and Park City Resolution 05-2020, adopted March 19th, 2020. The written determination of a substantial health and safety risk required by Utah Code Section 52-4-2074 is attached as Exhibit A. Board members will connect electronically. Public comments will be accepted virtually as described below. To comment virtually, raise your hand on Zoom. For more information on participating virtually and to listen live, please go to www.parkcity.org. So at this time, I would like to go ahead and call for a vote on this written determination. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, then we will go ahead and adopt the written determination. And our next section is public comment. So we did receive written comments that were included in the JTAB packet. It's my understanding we did not receive any written comments after the JTAB packet was published. And we are going to start off with having public comment on items that are not on the JTAB agenda. Is there anyone from the public that has an item that is not on the agenda today?
Sorry, just one second. I had to unmute myself. Yes, there are a few participants with their hands up, and I will allow you to speak using the microphone on your device that you're using.
Okay. You want to call out who can go first, Andy?
The first hand, I'm trying to do this in the order that I saw it. The first hand was Karen Swan. Karen, I'm going to allow you to talk now.
Yes, good morning. I'm sorry, I don't have a copy of the agenda. Actually tuned in regarding the city bus schedule, mainly the pink line. Is this the time to talk about this?
That is our first agenda item. So
Okay.
if I ask you to hold your comment until we present and then ask for comments after the
Thank
presentation.
you. Do I need to raise my hand again?
Sure, when we get to that item.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Was there anyone else that wanted to speak on items that's not on the agenda?
Kim, can you display the agenda so that people can see what's
Yeah.
on it?
Andy, if you would. Okay. So are you seeing any other comments at this time, Andy?
I don't see anyone else with a hand raised. If you're curious how to do that on your device you're using, there should be a hand icon. You can tap or click on that and that will raise your hand and signify that you'd like to use your microphone. Okay, I don't see any other hands at this time.
Okay.
So is there anything on the agenda that's going to talk about the purple line today? Because there's one gentleman that's asking that in chat.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
The overall winter service will have the purple line. as
During
well.
the winter service item. Okay, thank you.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and start with our first discussion item, which is just review and acceptance of the August 24th meeting minutes. Are there any recommended changes to the minutes at this time? Okay, hearing none, then the minutes are approved.
No, you need to do a vote, Kim.
Oh, okay.
So I move that we approve the minutes of August 24th, 2020.
Second.
Great. Is that
Kim.
approval? Kim seconded? Okay. Great.
And a vote?
Any opposed?
Aye.
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 Okay. Great. We'll go ahead and enter the meeting minutes into the record without any changes. And sounds like the moment we've all been waiting for. We'll go ahead and get started with the winter service presentation. So we'll go and walk through the winter service proposal. And then after that, we'll go ahead and take public input. So Scott Birmingham, are you ready to walk us through this?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I think the best way to do this is we're going to start with the Exhibit 7, the summary. There is a lot of information in this packet with all the survey and ridership numbers and everything. But let's go ahead and start with this exhibit 7, which I think is now currently showing. And we'll just kind of go through each item, each route. This is organized with the greatest savings being the top, and then going on down in orders according to the savings that we find from the changes. So starting with the one red, we did have some comments that people were worried about the reduced frequency and the eliminated service to Queens Junction. We do have the 5 yellow, which I think many people might not understand, will be changing to go to the resort as well as Deer Valley. And with that 5 yellow, we will have 15-minute frequency in the Prospector area, in the core highest ridership area of Prospector, going to the resort, Main Street, and Deer Valley. So we did feel like there was no change needed as far as the frequency. And we also looked at ridership for the Queens Junction area and found it to be around less than 25 riders a day. We did think that we were going to be able to handle that with the on-demand, and people might even find that it might be even more convenient to be able to call up and schedule a ride at the time that they were needing. So the recommendation on the one red is to leave the original recommendation of 30-minute frequency from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Any comments, any discussion on that one?
Can you talk about what you see being done with the on-demand service and the ridership kind of numbers out to the hospital and stuff? Because historically, we really didn't see that many people using the on-demand, but as Tim Henney brought up last time, the numbers for people using the red line to get to the hospital looked more like 20 a day. So how do we deal with that discrepancy?
Well, yeah, so yeah, 20 to 25 a day is what we saw. We do feel like the on-demand service can handle that number. Of course, those numbers were from last year as well. We don't know what the ridership will be this year, but we do feel like the on-demand service will be able to handle that ridership up to Queens Junction. Does that answer the question, or?
Yeah, sorry, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions on the red or comments? All right, if not, we'll move on to the 3 blue. We received many comments on this one, concerned about eliminating the blue. We do have the 2 green that runs pretty much the same routing as the 3 blue. It's not a high ridership route. You do save quite a bit of money by eliminating this route. So it is, we are recommending that we do continue to eliminate the 3 blue.
Can you zoom in or zoom out so that we can see the full, both the cost savings on the right margin and whatever's in the left?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the right balance of being able to read this text. Does that look good?
Pretty close. We can still see the colors half up. There we go. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Scott, this is Sarah. I just wanted to remind everyone that this is an adjustment that we're doing just for this 1 year because of COVID. So when you say eliminate the route, we're just really suspending it for this 1 year, correct?
Yes, sorry, that's a bad choice of words. We are just suspending it for this year. And that's due to the savings that we could get and due to the COVID-19 related tax-based cut. So yeah, this is just, these are temporary suspensions. Any other questions on the 3 blue or comments? If not, we'll move on to the 10 white. So we did receive some comments mentioning that 11 might be a little too early to get some workers home. Also some concern about the frequency being reduced. This is a tough one. I think we'll try to, make sure it runs a little bit later, not exactly 11, but maybe 11:10, just to try to make sure we can capture those that get off at 11 that need to get home from work. So when we put 11 p.m., I'm probably going to have it be just a little bit later than that, try to capture those workers best I can. Also the frequency, the savings comes from that reduction in frequency. Otherwise, we cannot get that great amount of savings. We do feel like the ridership will be down, so that the 15-minute frequency will be able to handle the ridership that we'll see this winter. So we're recommending to not make any changes to the original recommendation. Any comments or questions on the 10 white? If not, we'll move on to the 6 lime. 6 lime, we had some comments worried about the reduced frequency in the middle of the day. We also had some comments that stated that they liked the extension to Deer Valley, but also that, when it goes through that more congested area through Main Street and up in Deer Valley, it could become less reliable, which, we'll have to keep an eye on, see what the traffic's going to be like for that, and if it does bog it down going through there. But this is the first time doing this in the winter, and we'll have to see how that goes. So we do feel like the 15-minute frequency is actually an added 15 minutes between Eckerd Hill, Kimball Junction, and all the way through to Deer Valley is actually a great benefit it's going to be a great benefit to many people, that they can have that 1-seat ride all the way from those areas all the way up to Deer Valley. So we are recommending that we keep with the original recommendation on this one. Any comments or questions on the 6 lime? Okay, we'll move on to the 4 orange. So we got a lot of comments on this one, saying that people depend on this service to get to their employment. It's also used for recreation. People get into the Silver Lake ski area up there. Some people are worried about the crowding on the bus. So based on this, we had some conversations with the stakeholders, with Deer Valley, with Stein Erickson, some of the employers up there in the Silver Lake area. And based on their feedback, we did adjust the times to start a little earlier at 6 a.m. To 9:30 a.m. and then restarted at 2 o'clock and run it to 6 o'clock, and then have a PM pickup between 10 and 11. So we did make a change on the 4 orange based on the feedback that we received. Anybody have any comments or questions about that one?
What was the change in the cost savings, if any?
It actually will cost a little bit more, upward about $50,000 more for the winter to make these changes.
So the savings were 217,000 or something, 207,000.
Correct. They were over 200,000 before, and so now we actually are spending a little bit more, but we do feel like this is the best thing to do based on the feedback we received.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll move on to the trolley. So the trolley, people did mention that the trolley makes it easier and more accessible for those that are elderly and have disabilities. Of course, we do sympathize with that. but we do feel like that there are ways to access Main Street, and that this cost savings is significant enough that we want to just temporarily suspend the trolley, maintain that original recommendation. Anybody have any comments or questions on the trolley? Okay, we'll move on to the 5 yellow. So most of the comments on this mentioned wanting to have more direct service to Main Street and Deer Valley from the Prospector area. And, you know, we do understand that, you know, that would be ideal. And that's something we'll be definitely looking at in the future. But this year, with just the fiscal situation, we're just trying to find ways to cut costs. And so we do feel like the original recommendation is the best way to go, just to receive those cost savings on that 5 yellow. So we're recommending no change to the original recommendation on that one. Any comments or questions on that one? Okay. Next will be the 9 purple. Once again, we did receive many comments on this one on the survey about people depending on this to get to their employer. And we also spoke with the stakeholders on that 9 purple route. And from those discussions with and the comments from the survey, we did modify the hours of service on the 9 purple. We are gonna we do recommend running the 9 purple, and we did modify the hours on that. And so that'd be 6:10 a.m. to 9:40 a.m., 2:10 p.m. to 6:10 p.m., and then a later 10:10 p.m. to 11:10 p.m. Time. So once again, that did cost a little extra from what the original recommendation was.
What was the original savings?
So original savings, this cost us about $15,000 more, 10 to 15,000. So it was close to 100,000 originally, the savings. And I think it could have been even more. I have to double check on that. If we had suspended the 9 purple, it would have been even greater. But we are not recommending to eliminate or suspend this 9 purple for this winter season. Anybody have any comments?
Take this opportunity? Yeah, can I ask, this is not just about the 9 purple, but about some of the things that we've heard from like the HPCA about employees and the hours that they work. Have we sat down with, in the case of the 9 purple, it would be primarily Deer Valley and the Montage. I mean, I saw some of the comments in the survey where they were like, you know, we have people that get in at 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, and then they leave at 2 and 3 and 4, and then another batch leaves at 8 and 11 or whatever. And it just kind of went on like that. And it seems to me that there's a middle ground that could potentially be reached with both the resort workers, the hotel lodging workers, and maybe the Main Street employees of, if there was a little bit of coordination at both ends that say, look, you know, I know you just out of your normal way of doing business have people kind of coming to work for a spread of 3 or 4 hours in the morning. But if you could collapse that down to a 2-hour spread instead of a 4-hour spread, then we could turn around and run less bus service, but give you, you know, get those people up the hill. It seems like a lot of the businesses that we're talking to are just doing their employee schedules as they always have. And it seems to me that there's an opportunity that if we provide a narrow window of bus service and they adjust their work schedules to fit into that, then it seems like there could be a win-win where we could reduce service, save money, and that they still get their employees to work. Has any of that happened?
Specifically not with having them change any of their employee shifts. That I think will be an ongoing conversation we can have with them. I don't think it's going to happen this winter.
Well, let me just, then I'm going to push back. I think it should happen this winter. I think they should be willing to make some adjustments. And I mean, like I'm sitting here looking at the purple line, and there's, you know, a 3.5 hour slot in the morning and a 4 hour slot in the afternoon. And, you know, I would recommend we go back to some of these businesses and say, look, we're going to run this bus for 2 hours in the morning. And we'll work with you to figure out what the right 2 hours are, but it's going to be 2 hours, not 4 hours. And I think just us adjusting around all of their needs, I want to meet their needs, but a lot of times these schedules are just, you know, the way it's always been. And I don't think necessarily, or it's going to be one of these things where it turns out that just such a small handful of people are at the extremes of the time and the bulk of the people are in the middle. I'd like to find a balance, and I'd like to see what they can do to work with us to make sure they get their employees up the hill with the minimum amount of bus time that we have to run them to make that happen. And this is the year to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand that would be ideal. I don't know, you know, yeah, we definitely could have more conversations with those employers to find out why the shifts are the way they are, and see if we can't find a middle ground to get the greatest number of employees to work and back.
Because we've just, for what it's worth, we've gone from, we were going to cancel the purple to now we've got, gosh, what's this, seven hours of service or something like that. I mean, that's a big jump. That's, I don't know where you got the $15,000, but we don't run 7 hours of service a day for $15,000 for the winter. This is a lot more money that we are putting into the purple. And so, and it's not just the purple. I mean, the same thing we're going to get to where, you know, we've got a lot of our bus service for Main Street ending at 11, which may be the right thing to do. But again, we've got a lot of people in Main Street that get off of work at one time. And I just don't think we've traditionally thought about things like, hey, you know, if we had, and I'll pick the time because I don't know what the right time is, the businesses would have to, but if we ran 2 buses, one at 12:30 and one at 1 o'clock, and, you know, the answer is be on it or not, you know, whatever the right times are, and they need to adjust how they let their employees go at the end of the evening, or they're not on the bus. I just don't think, I think we tend to think in, okay, we're going to run it at exactly, you know, 15 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever for 4 hours. And that's just not, especially with employee shifts, that doesn't need to be the way. That's just the default because no one's cared before. The bus ran all the time. Life was good.
Steve and Scott, I believe there's a member of the montage team that has their hand raised. I don't know if we want to try and get through all of the route by route service changes first and then do have a discussion about this, or if we want to allow this person to speak right now.
You guys pick. I don't know what's easiest for you. And my comment is more than just the purple, but the purple just seemed to be such a glaring example of it.
Okay.
Andy, this is Caroline. I would suggest we get through all of the recommendations and then allow the, and the JTAB members can speak, but let's let the public speak after we get through all the recommendations because it's already 9:30.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation with approval from Kim.
Yeah, that's my recommendation as well.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll second that. Third that.
All right. I did want to mention, as far as the cost savings, the original recommendation had 2 separate ones. There was one that had some hours in it, and the other one was to suspend the service completely. If we had suspended the service completely, that would have been a whole lot more savings. But there were two separate recommendations on that 9 Purple originally, one with some hours and one completely suspended. 2 options. So the 2 greens next. So many comments on this one. Worried about the frequency, maybe it wouldn't be adequate enough. We do feel like, based on ridership that we, from last year, that the 30-minute frequency will be able to handle the ridership for that area. So we're recommending no change to that original recommendation. Anybody have any comments or questions on that one? Moving on to the 7 Pink. This one had the greatest number of comments on it. Almost all of them were against eliminating service to Silver Springs neighborhood, with many comments mentioning depending on it for recreation, work, and just getting around. So based on the survey results, we recommend maintaining service to Silver Springs with the reduced service hours that we originally recommended. Did anybody have any comments or questions on the 7 Pink and the Silver Springs neighborhood?
This is Kim. I have a few questions for you. But before I ask those, I just want to remind people that we were looking, I should say we are looking at a severe decrease in our tax revenue for this year. And this is a fee-free bus system. So it doesn't generate its own revenue. We do rely on state and federal grants, but you know, those aren't guaranteed right now either. So we were looking at having to make a 35% reduction in service, and that equates to about, you know, we were targeting about $2 million. So as we looked at these routes, we felt like initially Silver Springs would still be served from the standpoint of there being a stop adjacent to the neighborhood. And I realize out on 224 is not ideal. However, we have, and I want to remind people too that it was just temporary for this winter. And we were really hoping through some analysis that I know Summit County is going to be doing, that we could reinstitute the line with a much more efficient system and something that would probably serve members of that community better than it currently does. But in light of the feedback we received, like was stated, we are going to keep the service through Silver Springs. And but I did have some questions because a lot of people said that they used it regularly, but do we have the numbers? I think Robbie had been looking into this, the numbers associated with the Silver Springs stop specifically.
Yes, we do have those numbers. They should be in the packet there. I think we came down to it's between 75 to 100 riders a day at those stops through Silver Springs.
Okay, which is still, you know, and that's during those winter months, correct?
Correct. That was for last winter.
Right, but during the summer, we saw very little ridership.
Yeah, it definitely drops in the summer.
Yeah, and particularly probably this summer. But so we are committing again to have the service in Silver Springs, and we will still be analyzing how we provide service to not only that neighborhood, but the other neighborhoods in the basin, and hopefully find some more efficient ways to provide that service.
All right, anybody else have any comments or questions on the 7 Pink?
It looked like to me, Scott, that by putting back the loop in Silver Springs, but by changing the headway or the hours, that the savings were approximately the same. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate. Yes. the changes to the Silver Springs area would actually, we're based on having it be more streamlined, efficient, reliable, and less about the cost savings on that one.
Thank you.
Moving on to 11 Black. Well, all the rest pretty much is the same. 11 Black, we're going to have the 6 trips daily. So we're reinstating the early morning trip on the Camas that we temporarily suspended back in the spring. So that'll be coming back, the early morning trip on that one. Citywide will be the same as last year. And on demand, like we talked about earlier, will now service the Quinns Junction area. So that's the summary of the recommendations. I guess we can now open it up to questions and comments from the public. Is that what we want to do now?
There's no other comments from the JTAB members.
Okay.
Should. Is there any other comments from the JTAB board?
I just wonder if, given the hard stop that we have at 10, if there are other things that you want on the agenda to go over with JTAB board members before we open it up for public comment, in the event that people can comment both on the winter schedule and also on something else that may be presented.
And I just want to note that I don't have an 10 o'clock commitment. I just had to be out at a hard stop at 10:45, which is after our scheduled completion time. So
Okay.
I noticed that these are all information items. So if I need to, I can provide Chris with updates after he has to leave.
And I've reviewed the packet, but I'm just wondering if there, it looked like we have some revisions to the bus stop improvements that are probably the next item that we would be talking about that would require input.
Yes, I think the winter services are most pressing because we do need to have some decisions made so we can actually execute the service. The bus stop, we do want some input, but it's not as pressing as the winter service is. So if we could continue on this topic, I would appreciate it.
Let's do so then.
Okay, thank you.
So I do have one question, just, you know, at least as the current status, I guess we're not going to be seeing, I think the answer is any J1s. Maybe it's greatly reduced J1s. Have you guys had conversations with the lodging and the ski resorts about, you know, how they expect that to change their workforce, and therefore, because I mean, I know J1s are a huge part of our winter ridership because they, you know, almost exclusively show up without cars, and, you know, they're dependent on the buses for everywhere they go. And if they're all gone, how does that change the winter ridership and the impact on transit?
Yes, we definitely have had those discussions and looked at that, and it's not a scenario where they're all gone, more like they're reduced in numbers. And so that's why we felt confident with the recommendation of a 35% service cut, taking that into consideration as one of the variables, but they are still going to be hiring J1s as part of their workforce this year.
So then we don't see a real difference between the, you know, I'll call it the J1 ridership, whatever the, you know, the folks without cars that are coming in as a workforce. We don't see a big ridership difference between previous years.
It definitely will be less, but not zero. So, you know, the 35% cut seemed to meet the needs of the J1s that are anticipated.
And Kim, can I jump in? I do know we had discussions about, there is a little bit of a shift from J1s to now they're hiring people from out of state that also are coming here without cars and need the bus service. So it might not be J1s, but there are people being hired from out of state that are going to be living in the housing and will rely on the buses as well.
Okay, thank you. Just didn't know if those conversations had happened. I hadn't heard the answers.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments from the JTAB board? All right. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to public comment then. Andy, do you want to lead out with the order you saw them come in?
Yeah, and just a reminder to try to limit your comments to 5 minutes so everyone gets a chance to speak. Melissa, your hand was raised first, so if you would still like to speak, keep your hand raised and I will allow you to talk. All right, Melissa, you have microphone access.
Well, good morning, this is Joseph and Melissa. First, before I start with my comment, I would like to thank the committee. Kim, thank you for leading those conversations. We really appreciate it. And, you know, here are my comments. So, Mr. Joyce, just to answer some of your questions, as a team, we have met several times with the city and, you know, we had brainstorm meeting and, you know, we came to a compromise as far as, you know, what was in the past and what's going to be now. And I'm talking with Melissa and hearing you voicing some of your comments, you know, we'll be willing to look at the morning schedule starting from 6:10 and until 9 o'clock. So that's 40 minutes that you can have back. And also in the afternoon, we talked about from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. pickup. So you have about 50, probably an hour left savings for all the transportation. Just as a reminder, our hotel will project about 60% occupancy for this winter because we have some groups and transient, and that's about 15% less of previous year's occupancy. Also, you are correct, Scott. We have H2Bs that we hire, and they are with us in housing. They don't have any transportation. And starting in January, we are looking at J1s to complement our associate compendium. So, you know, I just want to be clear that this is still happening as a strategy, you know, for our hotel. We also have staggered our scheduled start time, and, you know, we are tracking them as well for each of the department of the hotel. And lastly, you know, with the occupancy that I communicated to all of you, mortgage is still a great source of revenues for, you know, to help fund your establishment. I'm talking about the tax revenues, etc. So, you know, from the bottom of our hearts, from the montage team and all the other business leaders, you know, going up to our resorts, which means Deer Valley as well, we thank you for your flexibility. So those are the comments from our montage. Melissa, do you want to add anything else?
No.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. Is there any JTAB member discussion on that comment? Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting my microphone. If there's no JTAB discussion on that comment, the next person with their hand raised is Victoria. Victoria, if you would still like to speak, keep your hand raised and I will give you microphone access. All right, Victoria, you are on.
Hi everyone, my name is Victoria Schlepper. I work at Deer Valley Resort. First off, I wanted to
Victoria, this is Steve Joyce. We can just barely hear you.
Okay, is this better now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted to first off say thank you to Kim and Scott through working through Deer Valley's comments on the orange and purple line. Those are lines that are very important to our workers as well as hotel workers. Steve, one thing that I would say as a comment back to staggering start times or condensing start times to get everyone up on those same buses is last year we saw some overcrowding on the Orange Line already to Silver Lake. So condensing those start times would add to the crowding of the buses. And in this COVID time, ideally we want to take away from crowding of buses. Purple Line, I think that we'll see more people using that this winter. Just Orange and Purple are both very important to the resort in terms of limited parking capacity at both of those base areas. And then one comment I would say as you're moving forward, I think it's awesome that the city has started to kind of split out commuters versus locals versus the tourists that are riding the bus. And I think as we move forward into bus route planning in the future, that's something that would be great to keep in mind because I know commuters are more likely to take the bus if it's gonna be more efficient for them, and versus tourists are more willing to be on a bus for longer to go around town, etc. So just things to consider for the future, but I think you guys have done a great job with reducing the service as needed, and thank you for listening to the resort feedback on all of the lines that are important to us.
All right, is there any JTAB member discussion on that comment?
Yeah, I'll just throw in the one thing that I'm trying to figure out, and I guess everybody's got their own crystal ball, is a lot of the concerns that I read in the comments about overcrowding on buses and things. I mean, right now, month to month, we're anywhere from 70 to 80% down off of our year to year. And I guess it's who knows what it's going to look like when we get into the winter. But at least so far, I personally, my little crystal ball says a lot of the issues that we've had with overcrowding on bus lines simply isn't going to happen this year. I just don't see us, I can see us maybe going from, I guess August was 77% down year to year. I can see us maybe getting to 50% down year to year, but I don't see us being anywhere close to what our normal years are. So I'm just less concerned about that. And who knows, maybe I'll be wrong and we really will pack a lot of people on the buses, but I don't see that happening. It's certainly not happening now.
All right, if there's no more discussion, I will move on to the next comment. Thanks, Victoria. All right, next up is Sue. Sue, if you'd still like to talk, just keep your hand raised and I'll give you microphone access. All right, Sue, you are on. Sue, if you're speaking, I don't think we can hear you. If you don't want to comment anymore, just let us know. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. If you, Sue, I will put your hand down, and then later if you do want to comment again, just raise your hand again and I will give you microphone access once more. All right, the next hand that is raised is James. James, if you'd still like to speak, just keep your hand raised and I will give you microphone access. All right, James, you're on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. I just wanted to thank everyone involved in this process as far as taking survey, getting the survey comments, listening to what people had to say, and I'm a resident of Silver Spring, and it's just very important to us to have that access, and I really appreciate the reconsideration of that service, and have always appreciated the public input that's allowed by Park City and Greater Park City government. So just wanted to say thank you.
I'll just add a comment to that. This is Kim. So I know there were a couple comments on the input that we received stating that, why didn't you get input before you ever put it together? And we've found over the years that it's really helpful to have something for people to react to, for us to take a first stab at it based on the data that we have and input that we had already received, and then put out that version and then get the feedback based on that. So we really do appreciate everybody's comments, and it was really some interesting feedback, not just for this process, but just going forward when we look at future route planning.
Yeah, I think again, the thoughtfulness of the whole process has been very, very much appreciated. So thank you.
All right, so Sue, I'm wondering, are you on dialing in on a phone? I do see that there.
It looks like she put something in the chat.
Oh, perfect. I was hoping that. Okay, Sue, you do still have microphone access if you'd like to speak. I don't know if we're having issues with hearing you, but I can also read Sue's comments out loud. Oh,
can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. So I did write in the questions. Thank you. I appreciate it. I first wanted to thank you for maintaining the red line service out to Wyatt. It's really a essential lifeline for those of us who live year round out here at the end of Prospector. My question is, if there is crowding during the peak winter ski season, such as during Christmas, New Year's, Martin Luther King, etc., Sundance, will you have the option of increasing the frequency of bus service, or is that just not something that's going to be possible?
That's something we are going to try to do, Sue. We'll basically add more buses if we have the availability of people and buses at that time, but we're not going to have as great of an ability as we have in years prior because of our financial constraints.
So that means that if there is crowding, will the bus drivers limit the number of people who are allowed to get on the bus, or will riders have to discipline themselves individually?
The bus drivers will just limit the amount of people that the bus can take as they would have any other time. We do not have the 6-foot social distancing requirement because of the mask usage. So it is possible that you could have crowded buses and people would have to make the choice of whether or not they want to ride that bus. Our app also does show the amount of people on a bus, so people can plan ahead and look at that information when making their decisions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a quick comment on Sue, the issue that she's bringing to light here. And Kim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but to some degree, we're taking a fairly conservative approach to our suspension to meet the projected reduction in revenues for transit across the entire region. If we were to see crowding on the buses, as Steve says, he thinks in his crystal ball that's unlikely, and Sue's asking, but what if? That corresponding what if would probably be indicative of more visitation, more tourism, and thus more revenue than we are projecting, which would allow us to add some revenue into our adjustments. And I think, as Kim just said, we have the ability, because we're going to have idle rolling stock, and we're probably going to have bus drivers who would be able to take on additional hours and routes. We are going to be more nimble on adding than we would possibly be in reducing. So I think keeping all of that in mind is something, I think it's just something for us to keep in mind.
Well put. We definitely have to be flexible in times like this.
All right, and then we have one more hand raised. Paul, if you still would like to speak, just keep your hand up and I'll give you microphone access. All right, Paul, you are on.
Okay. This is Paul Anderson. First, just want to say thank you for the process. I'm a resident of Silver Springs, so it's a very helpful route for us and our family and our neighbors. Here is a suggestion. It may create problems, but it's a way to maybe, you know, streamline the route, the pink route, and maybe save some money. And I think it's worth at least looking at. And that is that the 7 Pink currently goes from the 7-Eleven transit station up to the Grand Summit. It will get back on route at the Grand Summit. It may sit there for 5 minutes. It may sit there for 15 minutes, depending on if it's ahead of schedule. And then it comes back down to the 7-Eleven Transit Center. And, you know, running parallel to that route is the Canyon Cabriolet. So, you know, that is potentially one way to reduce cost and to streamline. I'm not sure if that was examined. I'm not sure how many of the, you know, 265 some odd comments in Silver Springs utilize that. I ride that bus a ton during the winter, and it's a small fraction of the riders who actually stay on it up to the Grand Summit or catch it at the Grand Summit. Most people get out at the Cabriolet and use that both directions. And then finally, it may not work because it may not address the needs of handicapped riders. You may need that Grand Summit stop to accommodate riders who can't get on a Cabriolet. But I thought I would throw that out as a cost saving measure. I mean, we're all very happy that you're keeping the route through Silver Springs, but we also all need to do our part. And so I just wanted to throw that out. I don't necessarily endorse it, but I wanted to throw it out to you all for consideration in the event that you find that ridership doesn't support doing that, at least during this winter until we can get back to a more normal schedule period. So that's my comment, and just want to say thanks again for the process and for listening, and thank you.
Are there any JTAB members that would like to discuss that comment?
I would put that to staff if they have any input on the analysis that they did on that route and if they considered that.
We did not consider it at this time because we do see a lot of ridership up and down Canyons Resort Drive, especially with the employees. But it is absolutely something we can look at and we will be looking at, especially as we start our pretty robust analysis of the entire transit system. So I appreciate the suggestion and the participation.
And Caroline, I'd ask also, I know nothing about the Canyons transit circulation, but I have this vague recollection that you have a circulator service that runs throughout the Canyons Village area. And if we have various redundancies, I mean, Paul points out one that is the Cabriolet, but if there's a second redundant service that is a circulator, and I could be completely wrong on that, it raises the question of why we would have 3 modes servicing the same area, but maybe there are ADA considerations.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point. And it is redundant, but it is redundant to meet the demand. So it's not a circulator that operates in the Canyons Village area. It's an on-demand service. And between, and these are only in the winter, by the way. So in the winter, between the cab, the Pink, and the CV Connect, we still get very, very high demand for all 3. So my sense is, without having done the analysis, of course, but just my anecdotal sense is that if we reduced any of those 3 services, and of course we don't have control over the cab, but if we reduced any of those 3 services very much, there would be more crowding and longer wait times. But to everyone's point, it is an analysis worth conducting.
Hey, Caroline, can I add something too?
Yes,
I just
please.
wanted to mention that the cabriolet isn't always reliable at all times of the year, all times of the day. So that's one of the things to think about, is that cabriolet does not run all the time.
Right, great point. And the other thing is that the Grand Summit is one of the highest ridership stops in the entire system. So people are using the Pink to get to the Grand Summit, even when they have the choice to use the cab or the CV Connect.
All right, if there's no more discussion on that comment, we just had one typed in the Q&A chat box, just from Ben, and I will just read it out loud so it will be entered in the record. Ben says, I would like to second James Middleton's comments about the thank you for maintaining Silver Springs service. It is greatly appreciated by our community. Just noting it here rather than taking everyone's time with additional verbal comments. Thank you, Ben Holtzman.
Okay, sounds like we don't have any other public comment. Are there any other comments from the JTAB board on these changes?
I'm good with them, and I need to sign off. I apologize. Have a great day, the rest of it.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Chris.
Bye.
Yeah, I'd just like to commend you guys on doing a great job of working. I mean, just reading through all the comments, it obviously reached a lot of people and got a lot of input from different areas, from companies and riders and outsiders who are visitors or second homeowners and stuff. It was a lot of good information in there, and I was glad to go back and see that you guys had found some things to change as a result of all of that. So thanks for all the work on that one.
Thank you.
I think that's a really great point that Steve is making about, the ability to distill some of these comments. And I think I agree, and I'll second Steve's comments about kudos for the work that's been done and the analysis and the decisions that you've arrived at. I'd also like to emphasize and maybe amplify what I heard from Victoria when she was talking about, from an employer and a trip generator standpoint, and how we're going about and looking at the different users of our transit system, being locals, being commuters, being workers, being visitors and guests. And, they all have very different needs, and I would say different patterns. And I think that, I've said this before, we should use this time of COVID as an opportunity. And I think I'd like to see as much energy and resource and focus put into what I believe is the opportunity. And I could be completely wrong on that, not knowing, the specifics and nuts and bolts and not being a transit expert and all those sorts of things. But I will just say from my perspective that there's a great opportunity for us to look at the transit system we would want, not the transit system that we inherited and we continue to make adjustments to, but sort of repurposing, rebooting, and revisioning using that distillation of our users and our needs and how they get around town. I think we've done a terrific job over the last 40 years of getting close to 3 million riders annually. But I think if we look at this as an opportunity to really repurpose the whole system and use this time of COVID as kind of a laboratory and a litmus test for some of our assumptions, we're going to make great progress in the next decade on transit. So that's what, I think we're headed in that direction. We're making great progress. I'd like to continue to keep some focus on that. So thanks.
Okay, thank you.
This is Kim. I'll echo those comments, Tim. I really appreciate those and agree. Thank you to staff for all the work that was put into this. I think what we've ended up with is going to help us meet the goals of the 35% reduction. And I think it's definitely an opportunity. There was one comment that kind of struck me. It was, oh my hell, we'll lose job or be forced to buy a car. My entire life is based on the free transit system. And I saw that as a kind of a backdoor compliment. I'm so appreciative that we have a system like this in the area and that we're able to maintain it as a free system. And so that really makes it imperative for us to find ways to continue to improve and streamline it. And I just want to make sure, you know, people understand that this is a temporary reduction. And I think when we come back to full capacity, it'll be better than it was before. So thanks again for all the comments from the public and being part of the process.
Right, there's just one more comment in the Q&A chat box that I would like to read, so it is entered in the public record. And then if we want to move on after that. This one is from Emily Elliott, and it says, appreciate the work, but still a shame. You had the most comments about the blue line. Hope you reconsider at least partial service. Many people in this area use this bus during the ski season. Thanks. So I wanted to make sure that that was entered because I think these comments disappear after the Zoom meeting is over.
Great, thank you, Andy.
Kim, this is Caroline. Hey, can I just weigh in real quick? And I want to really thank Scott and everyone else who worked on the survey. And the way the information was shared with all the JTAB members was really effective. I think this is the first time we've ever seen it sort of set up like this in terms of recommendations for changes or adjustments. And it was really easy to digest and understand. And I'm so appreciative of that. It makes a big difference, at least for me. I'm a visual learner, so this made a big difference in how I digested the information. I thought it was really excellent. So thank you to all who worked on that.
Thank you for that. Okay, well, there's no further comments. I think we've had some great discussion here today, and I've really appreciated the comments in the process. I am hoping that we could go ahead and vote on this proposal. I don't know, Steve, if we would like to maybe hold out the purple portion and revisit that. I'm not sure how you feel about that, or if we would just vote on the proposal as a whole.
I'm happy voting on the proposal as a whole. I would just encourage you guys as we continue to monitor how the winter goes and everything that, you know, I just want to make sure that we're working with the different commercial entities, whether it's the resorts or the lodging or anybody else, restaurants, anything like that. And that, and I know you guys had a lot of discussions with them. I just want to make sure that they work with us to modify their behaviors to help us as much as they possibly can, just like we're doing with them. So I'm happy approving the purple if you guys think that's the right thing, and I assume you do since that's the recommendation.
Okay, great. All right, so do I have a motion for a vote then at this time?
I move that we approve the winter route changes as proposed.
And I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will go ahead and approve the route changes. Thank you everyone for your hard work on this and your input. Appreciate it.
So when will these actually take effect?
I think we were going to implement some of our service on November 15th and then ramp up a little bit after that, as we typically do in the winter.
Okay, thanks.
Kim, just a question on process. Does our JTAB vote then go to the two councils for affirmation?
Yes, we, at least for Park City Council, we do take it forward as an informational piece.
I guess my question is there a vote needed at the council level to affirm the recommendation from JTAB, since JTAB is an advisory committee?
Right. It's my understanding that a vote is not needed from the council. But if I'm wrong, please correct me, but that's my understanding at this time.
Tim, I think actually the vote that we did here was not a required vote. It wasn't an approval by JTAB as much as a recommendation, and that it's actually the transit department deciding what to do there. So I think everything is just informational in our feedback. It wasn't even, no, I guess it was noticed for action.
Well, Steve, that's my question. You know, JTAB is an advisory board. It makes recommendations to the council and makes recommendations, or, you know, is sort of a testing board for the transit department in general. My understanding, and I may be wrong on this, is that JTAB recommendations and advice given and votes taken then goes to the separate councils for, you know, either affirmation or denial. So I'd like clarity on that at some point. Maybe Sarah can look into that, and or Matt Dias, and give us some feedback in a memo or a note. But that's my understanding.
That's a good point.
We will circle back to you and clarify. We were planning to bring it to the September 22nd City Council, but we will clarify the process for that agenda item and get back to you.
That would be, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, with that then I guess we'll go on to our next discussion item, which is regional system discussion. I don't know, Caroline, if you'd like to kick off that discussion.
I would actually ask that Kim do so. She's been involved and she's our council rep, so it would be great if she could speak to that very briefly.
Okay. Certainly, thanks, Caroline. So we had a work session of the county council recently. It was just a couple of weeks ago, where we presented a proposal for moving forward for initially a contract to conduct a study of our routes within the county jurisdiction. And it's through a company, Via, that can provide, they're a sole source vendor because of the variety of needs we have right now, and they can meet all of those. And we're really excited for that process. And our goal is to have those routes established under the county transit district by June 30th, 2021. And we've been in discussions with the city leadership that serves on JTAB, and of course the county manager and the city manager have been involved in those discussions. And this is our first step towards a transition and establishing a regional system. And we are excited about the partnerships, of course, not only with Park City, as we'll maintain what I refer to as our mutual routes, and look at other opportunities to serve the residents of the area. But it'll give new opportunities to our neighbors, such as Wasatch County and the area around Wasatch County that we know has rather significant growth plans. And also looking at how we can improve our connection with the Salt Lake Valley. So again, we look forward to continuing our partnership with Park City and moving towards this regional framework.
Okay, I don't know if there's any questions about the regional system or further discussion at this time. Okay, hearing none. We will go on to the bus stop improvement priority recommendation. I'm excited we get to this. So Alexis, if you're ready, you want to take it away?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Jamie and I are actually going to joint present on this. This was a very collaborative process between city and county folks. So I need to give them some credit as well. Let me just share my screen here. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes, okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, so we are going to give an overview of our proposed process for bus stop improvements system-wide. Again, our goals for the next round of improvements are to improve ADA access and compliance system-wide, creating better first and last mile connections to the transit system, which ultimately leads to increased ridership. So to be clear, the initial phase that we're recommending and the stops that we're proposing in this report and presentation are recommending flat work improvements only. The cost associated here and the approach is not including amenities and lighting. So our first goal is to bring everything into ADA compliance and accessibility system-wide, and then go back in at a later date and do things like shelters and some of those nice to have things. So again, as a reminder, we conducted a bus stop inventory and accessibility study. We completed that last fall, and we have a very, very robust data set that includes photos and measurements and slopes and amenities or lack thereof of all of the permanent stops in our system. So it's about 250 stops that we have cataloged and mapped and many, many spreadsheets on. So each stop was given several grades actually, ADA compliant grades, amenity grades, functionality grades. So we were able to sort of rank these and filter these lists into something that's a little bit comprehensive and qualitative, I would say. So we prioritized 10 stops in the county and then 10 stops within city limits for improvement based on their poor accessibility. If they have a really bad grade, they're very inaccessible generally. And again, that's our first priority to improve. High stop utilization. So how many people are using this stop? If it's a very poor ADA compliant stop, but only 2 people use it, it's not at the top of our list, obviously. And then, you know, just some qualitative knowledge from the transit professionals and the transportation teams, city and countywide, of what the need is and what we really think should be the priority. Jamie.
Thank you. So I will just let everyone look at this list. This is top 10. So we obviously have some stops after this. Lots of need in the county. Like Alexis said, I think we focused on ridership and then just kind of understanding the system and where improvements would be prioritized. We didn't focus on 224 or certain parts of Landmark where we know there might be some future construction, for instance. So we went down the list otherwise, and this is where we ended up. We have some needs to maintain these stops that we will pull out of different funding sources. It will not come out of this grant, but we don't want to lose sight that those are high priority needs to keep the system maintained and functioning well in conjunction with these stop improvements.
Just a quick question on this. I was kind of surprised to see a $50,000 project and a $5,000 project on something that got an A and an A-. Could you just explain that?
Definitely, I'm glad you noticed that. So as Alexis said, there were certain grades assigned, and the ADA functionality sort of it filters out a couple of things that might not give it an A grade, but it's close enough with the functionality report, it's close enough. So some of these grades have a little bump because of that. Then other ones, and I'm just going to use Walmart because I think it's an easy one to grab onto. So it has the 8x5 pad, it has appropriate boarding and alighting space. It meets all of like the checklist criteria, but the bus can't actually get to where that place is, for instance. So it meets all the criteria and gets an A, but in reality, it needs some improvements for wheelchair board passengers not to be waiting out in the elements so that the bus can see them and make sure it appropriately curbs. That I think the report, like she said, is just tons and tons of amazing data sets and resources to look at. But you know, actually system, looking at it as knowing the system, that's where that bullet came on. Methodology is understanding the system. I think that's where staff just added to that report.
I appreciate you picking up on that, Steve. And I had the same conversation, pardon me, with Jamie prior to the meeting. And I just appreciate the staff not just looking at the grades and thinking, okay, let's pass that one up because it's got this ranking, but really doing the extra evaluation of the stops to see if, you know, on a practical basis, that's reflective of what the situation is on the ground. So thank you.
So moving on, the top 10 city stops identified are here. We have a little bit of a parallel process going on for a couple of our stops. It's the two at the top of the list here in front of A Fresh Market and Park Ave condos. We already had a contract and design work underway for these two stops to do some major improvements. As you can see, they see huge ridership, and we as a city already identified that they were a priority to improve. So I'm going to talk about them a little bit on the next slide. I think just something to point out and to clarify here, the first column of costs is the cost for flat work, and then the second column, which is sort of general and high level, is just a placeholder for amenities that would be above and beyond what we intend to spend on improving these stops for now. So that first column, we have a running total there, and I believe I added it to the staff report. It's a little bit less than what was put in the staff report. We have an update on what the Fresh Market and Park Ave construction costs are going to be, so it's a little bit less than that. Any questions on this before I move on? So again, we had this parallel process already underway before we started this process of identifying and prioritizing stops with the county. We began the development and design last year. This project is at 90% design and is essentially shovel ready. We're reviewing the draft bid documents now. Again, we just got an updated cost from the consultant this morning, and the estimate if we construct in 2021 is about $912,000. Again, this, just as a reminder, this is not just the cost for adding nice bus shelters and amenities. This is also addressing that first and last mile connection. There's actually major sidewalk improvements along 224 and around the corner on Kearns Boulevard. Caroline said something that really resonated with me before, that it's really great if you have this wonderful, beautiful transit stop, but if nobody can get there, it doesn't matter. So we took into consideration some major sidewalk widening improvements and ADA crossings and pedestrian ramps and things like that that we feel like are necessary to really elevate this stop and make it what it needs to be. Again, that we've been paying a lot of attention to this stop. It's a major destination. It's going to be one of the most utilized stops for people accessing the Future Arts and Culture District. It's also, these stops are, I think, are key as we consider the 224 BRT project and things like that. So we are just trying to plan ahead a little bit and be prepared for some of these projects coming. Let's see, so cost assumptions, this is very high level. I just want to add that disclaimer. Please don't get too attached to some of these estimates that we've done in-house. Again, for 250 stops in the system, we're estimating about $5 million for all flat work. If we want to add pads, curb cuts, you know, ADA compliance and accessibility projects, that's sort of the ballpark of what we think we may spend on that. And then the shelter assumptions, we're working on finalizing the design packages for shelters system-wide. They're designed to be modular, so you can size them up or down. And these are the ballpark estimates for shelters, seating, lighting, bike racks, garbage and recycling cans, etc. We have currently secured about $2 million in FTA grant funding for bus stop improvements. Again, we're hoping to use about $900,000 of that for the Park Avenue stops and sidewalk improvements, which leaves us just a little over $1 million with this round of funding for these other system-wide improvements that we are prioritizing. And again, this is an iterative process. We're going to be applying for funding year over year, and we're going to continue to make these improvements system-wide year over year. Oops, next steps, one more. So in order to sort of get a better understanding of what these flat work costs are going to be, and to actually hire a contractor to do this flat work, we need engineering drawings to get the project out to bid. So the next step would be hiring some help to bring those drawings to the bid package. We should be ready to release this winter, assuming that we're all comfortable moving forward with this list, and the intent would be to begin construction next spring and summer. And then, you know, on the back end, we're working closely together, city and county, to determine how to cost share the match requirements for the federal grant, and then how to manage the actual construction project. So we're working on those details as well this winter. And that is all I have. Any questions? Or Jamie, Caroline, Kim, do you want to add anything to that, I guess, first?
Well, I think great job, and I'm glad it's been such a collaborative effort between the city and the county on these improvements.
It's been fun.
Can I ask you a question, just kind of on a longer term thing? This gets back to what Tim was talking about of, you know, maybe this is an opportunity for us to change kind of our view of transit, and to kind of make some more fundamental shifts that would be really hard when we're really just slammed. You know, we looked a couple of years ago at doing microtransit or some variation of that, and it keeps coming up. And the whole premise that we were working on for microtransit was basically we'll pick you up at your house and get you to the nearest major bus stop. And that would kind of, in my mind, that would kind of make a shift that says, you know, the major bus stops like One Park Ave and all the things that are, you know, the Walmart that we just saw from the county, and those would obviously be some of the focal points. But some of the things that are out in the neighborhoods, you might actually, you know, if you have some of these little ones that we have you know, a concrete bucket with a stick in it that's our, you know, our sign for the bus stop. It seems like some of those might either become less important or go away altogether if you did something like microtransit. And it would be more focused on kind of the main routes and the main stops and things like that. So I'm quite happy with the top 10 that we saw for the county and the city here. But when you start talking about the 250 stops, it seems like that's something that before we start trying to knock out, you know, a bunch of improvements to areas, if we're going to make some sort of fundamental shift to what I think of as kind of the feeder lines, it would be maybe mistaken to invest, you know, $5-10 million in all the little stops around if we're not really going to make them a part of our core strategy going on. So does that fit? Does that make sense? And if so, how does that work with kind of where you guys are thinking things are going?
I mean, I think that's a great point. I would like others to weigh in as well, but I think it makes a ton of sense to right size those improvements based on the type of stop, the location, the right of way available, and the ridership. So I think that's part of this process when we, you know, we're not just filtering spreadsheets and saying, okay, this has a grade F, let's go and throw a concrete pad out there. I think that's the qualitative piece of like, does this really make sense? What is the future of our routes and service, and how do we sort of anticipate those changes?
And I'd even say, and Steve, thanks for bringing that up, because I was having the same thoughts going through my mind. You know, to me, the question that it brings up is, and what does transit look like in the future? Is there an evolution of transit? You know, is putting a bus stop in going to, is that wasted infrastructure work, or is that infrastructure work that can be repurposed to other forms of transit that we may not be able to envision at this point? We've talked a lot about that sort of vision, and leaving ourselves in the most opportunistic and flexible position with respect to all transit and all the investments that we're making in transit across all the different components of transit. So I think that has to apply, and that is what you're talking about with the qualitative analysis and review that I think we have to do.
I think those are great points, and that is the lens that we need to look through for every decision really going forward, is the bigger picture, where we're going, and you know, are these decisions in line with that? So we definitely have a lot of work to do in the near future to get that vision ironclad. So I appreciate you bringing that to light. And we are at 10:30, Sorry, is everybody okay with continuing? I know, Kim, you have a hard stop at 10:45.
Yes, I just want to add that when we did a second look at our recommended stops, we had that very thing in mind. So I don't know if our staff members want to provide a brief comment related to that.
Yeah, just echo, we did have that exact conversation. Everything that Steve and Tim said is exactly what we were talking about. But then more importantly, to Steve's point, we as staff were comfortable moving ahead with these 10 stops on the county side. And I know it's similar for the city, just because there are certain stops that even if we flex transit or change how we provide transit, we don't envision those high ridership, low accessibility stops changing significantly in the next couple of years. But it's absolutely an excellent point and an analysis that needs to be done.
Okay. Is there any other comments from the JTAB board?
Yes, I'd just like to say bravo.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We do have a public input opportunity here. I'm not sure if there's anyone from the public that wanted to comment on the bus stops.
Just for what it's worth, I know it's not on the bus stop piece, but before we end the session, there was a question that was, I think, really aimed at the county that popped up that was, is there a plan to extend to the Wanship-Colville area? And I know we don't want to sidetrack the bus stop piece. I just didn't want us to end the meeting without going back and circling around for that.
I can answer. No plan as of yet. However, as we keep mentioning, we're going to be going through a robust analysis and study over the next year, and that will absolutely be looked at in terms of demand and need. It's always been on our radar. The demand just hasn't been there yet.
And Charlotte, I want to assure you, I've kept your note from when you provided public input to this group. It was probably, I don't know, 9 months ago or so, but we're continuing to keep that on the radar.
Okay, Andy, do you see any other public comments this time?
I don't see any hands raised. Again, this will work the same way as the previous opportunity for public comment. If you would like to speak, raise your hand and I will give you access to speak. So yeah, if you would like to raise your hand now. All right, I don't see any raised hands.
Okay, great. Then we'll go ahead and go on to the COVID-19 update.
Before you move on, I just wanted to provide some clarity on our winter route discussion earlier. We will be taking the winter route changes to City Council, Park City Council on September 22nd, which is a Tuesday. And we will be having opportunity for public comment there as well. We advertised that we would do that, and so we will be doing that. So everybody that's still listening, please note that. And then in addition to that, I feel like the last couple of meetings we have had some kind of lack of clarity on which things we should be voting on, what JTAB's ultimate authority is as far as voting versus what goes to the council. So I would like to propose that staff go back and do some homework on that and create a document based on our ILA that is very streamlined and succinct to allow us to have that as a guideline going forward, so that we are clear and we don't have this kind of confusion every meeting. Does that sound good to everyone?
Yay.
Okay.
I'll second Steve's yay.
I'm on it.
Okay, great. All right, any other comments or do you want to move on? Okay. So
Kim, I think you just have one more quick thing. Is everybody okay with staying on a couple more minutes, or do we want to call it quits and push this to the next agenda item or the next meeting? Sorry.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I can stay on a couple more minutes. If we could get through, I don't know if there's anything substantial right now under COVID-19 update. And then I don't think there's a whole lot left. The only thing I noted is when we had some of the people that wanted to make comments earlier, and they said they couldn't find the agenda and didn't have a packet. So I know one woman was asking to have the document that we put up on the screen enlarged so she could read it. And so I went to both the county website and the city website, and the agenda and the packet weren't available. We didn't have it at all on the county website noticed for this meeting. And under the city, it just had the time that it started.
Yes, so
it didn't have the documents posted.
The agenda is posted. Right now we're still working on, were you on the main, like the listen live info page where it lists? Yeah, so we're still working on getting access to Granicus and uploading. It is uploaded to the Park City Transit website, and it is also uploaded to the Utah Public Notice website.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but yeah, we are working so it's under that same, like where the city council meetings are. The agendas are listed. We're working to make sure that it's uploaded in that area as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know that. Yeah, the COVID update's really quick. So I will cruise through. Andy, can you put up that slide for me? Basically, it's good news that I have with the COVID update today. So Park City was granted some CARES money from the FTA, and that amounted to $5.8 million in operating assistance and $379,000 in administrative expenses that they would reimburse us for. The expenses that we can claim start with January 20th of this year, and there's no expiration on those funds. So we did submit for a $3.6 million reimbursement. The county portion of that first reimbursement is $1.2 million, and the amount that would go to the additional mass transit tax is also $1.2 million. So instead of us billing the county for that and collecting that money from the AMT, we have just passed it through for reimbursement to the FTA and received a check for that. So the bills will be less in the near future because of this money that we were able to tap into. So we still have about 2.4 that we can access in those funds. So we'll show that on the invoices. We'll show which eligible expenses we were able to bill to CARES. Not everything can be billed to that. And the ones that are not eligible, we would still handle through our normal invoicing procedures. If there's any questions about that or more information. Okay, hearing none, then I guess we've got for next meeting in October, the Quinns Junction Park and Ride presentation. Just give everybody an update on that. And our next meeting is October 20th, which is a Tuesday at 9 o'clock. So is there any further comments at this time?
Thanks, everybody. It was a very productive meeting.
Great. Well, thank you. Then since we were over time, our meeting is adjourned. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.